Russia and Ukraine, united in rivalry? In the interview, Kremlin critic and former oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky.
Mr. Khodorkovsky, let's start with the situation in Ukraine. At the recent D-Day commemorations in France, there were informal meetings between U.S. President Barack Obama, Russia's Vladimir Putin, and Petro Poroshenko, the newly elected Ukrainian president. The German, Polish, and Russian foreign ministers also met in St. Petersburg. The West sees this as a step towards possible rapprochement. What's your assessment?
I'm convinced there must be negotiations. The situation in Ukraine is serious enough. But President Putin has also maneuvered himself into a most delicate and complicated predicament. If both sides remain unwilling to talk, the results could be disastrous.
Is there any possibility that the Kremlin can somehow come to terms with the new government in Kiev? Or will the threat of draconian sanctions somehow force Russia's hand?
Neither of those things matter. The only important issue is what Putin thinks. There's no doubt that he has a whole series of measures that he wants to impose on Ukraine. And if Kiev accepts them, Putin will put an end to some of the pressures he's been exerting. But under those circumstances, I doubt that Ukraine would remain a sovereign nation.
Означает это, что Украина осталась независимым государством. Я не твердо уверен. С другой стороны,
on the other hand,
несомненно,
counter strategies might help to correct Putin's demands, with the result of an acceptable outcome for both sides. But I'm not 100% convinced that sanctions are the best motivator. Ukraine and Russia must resolve their differences on their own terms. If Ukraine really desires freedom and sovereignty, it must be willing to fight for them.
The Russian president's overriding goal is pursuing the vision of a Eurasian Union, his response to the European Union, a kind of counterbalance. And to make the dream a reality, Putin needs Ukraine, or at least part of it. Is that his prime motivation?
It doesn't matter what his motivation was. The problem is that his strategy for Ukraine has spawned massive negative consequences for Russia. Russia is a very attractive country. In Eurasia, it's the recognized leader in terms of technology and science. Russia should exploit these advantages. We could have formed alliances with our neighbors that would strengthen all sides. Instead, Putin has achieved the exact opposite. Economic relations are fairly solid with most Eurasian nations. But that's mostly due to the sheer lack of alternatives. But since Ukraine, diplomatic relations with these countries have deteriorated drastically. Tensions are high throughout the region, and mistrust has grown exponentially. Mistrust both of Russia and ethnic Russians who live in those countries. Prime examples are the Baltic states. This is directly tied to Putin's policies. It may sound unfair, but my opinion is justified. Vladimir Putin has made broad promises, but has delivered very little. He has duped millions of Russians.
What about Crimea? It's clear Russia won't hand it back to Ukraine, and the West refuses to recognize the annexation. Will Crimea remain a thorn in the side of relations between Russia and the Western alliance?
Again, I'm convinced that Russia and Ukraine must find a way to work together. The two nations are indivisible. So we must travel the same path on the international stage and in relations with Europe. That's the only way to solve the Crimea dispute.
I want to hear your opinion about the clash of cultures and about the apparent rejection of the Western lifestyle. I'm talking about tolerance of alternative sexuality, freedom of speech, individuality, and egotism. Can Russian society accept these values?
Russians are every bit as much individualists as the citizens of Western Europe. I'd go so far as to say that a collective spirit is far more widespread in the West. That is precisely the problem we Russians have. We simply can't unite, even when it comes to finding solutions to contentious issues. It is vitally important to formulate alliances, independent of government power brokers. But so many Russians have already emigrated. Millions are living in the West. They have integrated seamlessly into Western society with ease. You'll find no Russian Chinatowns, no Russian districts in Western cities.
What about Russian quirks, traditions? Is it true that Russians would rather be feared than loved?
In reality, that translates into weakness and insecurity. There are so many Russians who believe in themselves, in their ability to compete, and in their inherent strengths. They understand that Russia is a part of Europe, and they also recognize their status as equals with Europe. Russia will not tolerate being treated as a small child. Russian culture is closely tied with Europe's. Without Russian influence, European culture would be entirely different.
How can we resolve these differences? You've said that there are very few free-thinking, liberal voices in Russia. You've also said that the vast majority of Russians are afraid to speak their minds. What can be done to combat the government-run media?
At the moment, we don't have too many alternatives. It's vital that our citizens are well informed. And Putin's regime understands that it can only retain control of important information when that control is exerted as discreetly as possible. Russian television is completely under government control. But print media is increasingly under pressure as well. And there have been attempts to regulate the internet too.
И сейчас очень серьезное наступление развернуто на интернет.
But modern technology is making it easier to break down these barriers.
Преодолеть эти барьеры, и это необходимо делать.
And we must keep doing so.
Задача наша, россиян.
Russians and a part of Western society face a united task, and that is to fight for the Russian people and their ideals. Western nations should support this battle.
Ukraine has chosen to ally itself with Europe. Let's say it builds a functioning, vibrant democracy based on law and order, with US and European support. How would that affect Russia? Would it be seen as an opportunity or a threat?
Для режима это несомненно угроза.
The Putin regime would undoubtedly see it as a threat. But for Russia, it would be a fantastic blueprint. It would be wonderful to see a prosperous and satisfied Ukraine, especially since we have such close ties. It might function as a paradigm, a precedent. People so close to us in terms of language and culture that have achieved success, building the foundations of democracy. That outcome could truly provide a blueprint for similar renewal in Russia.
Last question. Which teams do you want to see in the World Cup final?
I'm not a soccer fan, but like every Russian, I want to see our team in the final against Brazil.
Thank you.